So once you have that text um, laid out, we need to change the font. So if we go back to the instruction sheet, the font should be Satisfaction Regular. So let me change that to Satisfaction. And the font size is 12 points and it's black. And it says align and track as shown. So we're already at 12 points. And notice that my text box isn't big enough. But I do notice that the T aligns with that margin. And the G almost aligns with margin. It's pretty darn close. So I'm going to make my text box as wide as each margin. So it's going from here to here. And notice that the word wedding hyphenates. That's because it's too long. So what I'm going to do is select it, and I'm going to adjust my tracking. So if I come up here, that's going to be this button right here, and I'm going to reduce it, or I can do Option minus. I don't have to do it very much. I just want to do it until it's all on one line. So remember, tracking is adjusting that space between the text. So that looks pretty good, but I'm not sure where it goes up and down. So if I look on here, remember we said that we had like a 1/4 of an inch margin in here. It looks like we have, and if I were to measure it, it's about a 1/4 of an inch here as well. So there's about a 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of the picture to the top of that text. So again, I can click and drag a guideline. Here's my 5 inches, that's just below my picture. And I can look on that ruler, and it looks like this is about a 1/4 of an inch, because here's 1/2 an inch, is halfway between 5 and 6, and then a 1/4 of an inch is half of a half, right? So I'm going to put that right about there, and I can just click on that text box and move it down so that those ascenders fit just underneath that. Now I'm going to reduce the length of this box, not too much. I don't want the text to disappear, but I'm just going to reduce it a little bit so I don't have a bunch of other space to work in. That's kind of annoying. All right, now this text right here is body copy. And so if we look, it says place the file. So it's already been created for us. So typically, in most situations, the graphic designer is not going to be typing out the text. Sometimes they do in small firms, or if you work freelance, you might. But typically there's somebody else writing the copy. So if you were designing for a magazine, you probably have a journalist writing the copy. If you were designing like an ad, you might have a copywriter, somebody that's really good at writing. Maybe they have a journalism background or a public relations background or something like that. They would type that out, and they would type it in like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and then they would send you the file. So we happen to have that file. So I'm going to go to File, Place. We're going to go to that Elements folder, and in here there is a text file. We're going to hit Open, and then we're going to click and drag. So I know it's about halfway, about that, okay? And I can mark the halfway point on here, so you can see I've marked that halfway point. The way that I did that is I went to Layout, Margins, and Columns. So before, this was set up as one column. It didn't have any guides. I could pull a guide out at the halfway mark, but why not let the computer do the math for me? So for columns, I'm going to choose 2. And right now the gutter is 0, but you can see that it's broken this up into 1, 2 columns. A gutter is if you need space between the columns, so you can see that there's some space between here. But for this one, I just want to know where the halfway point is, because it gives me an idea of where this text needs to lay. Now you can see I have overset text here. So there's a lot more text in this text box than I can see, and even it's hard to pull that all the way down. But let me give you a little hint. If I take my text tool, and this works in like Microsoft Word and Google Docs as well. So if I click once, I insert my cursor. If I click twice, I select the word that I had clicked on. If I click 3 times, 1, 2, 3, I select the line of text that I'm on. So if I do that down here, 1, 2, 3, it selects that line of text. If I do it 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, it selects all the text. Even if I can't see it, it will select it. So I've selected that text. You can also just click and drag, but you can't get the text that's outside of the text box. I could resize this text box so I could see all of it as well. Any of those ways works. We just want to select that text. And our direction says that that needs to be Bordeaux Roman bold. If you can't find that font, just do the best that you can. Bordeaux Roman is going to be a very small font though, so you might end up having to change your font size if you have to use a different font. But try to find the Bordeaux. You should have installed this, but if you're having troubles installing it, just find a font that looks similar. You might be able to find this on DaFont and download it. But I want Bordeaux Roman bold, and it's a very small font. Look at what that did. So this is 12-point font, but this is Arial. And if I set that back to Bordeaux Roman, the only thing I changed was the font the font. I didn't change the size of the font. So this is just a very small font. So now it all fits in that text box. And again, it's going to be about halfway. So we'll reduce that to about halfway. But notice that all of the text isn't on here. We also need to look at some details. So first of all, we need to look at the alignment of the text. So typically we would have what we call flush left, ragged right text. But notice that this text isn't ragged on the right side. So what we're going to do, let me zoom in on this for you. So we are going to, let's select that text again. If you can't see all of it, either make your text box bigger or do that 4 clicks and you can select all of it. And if we come over here to our alignment tools, by default, we're using align left. If I use align center, that means that all of the text is centered on an invisible line in the middle of the text box. We don't want to use that. The next box is align right. So notice that all the text will be aligned on the right and it will be ragged on the left. That's not what we want either. The ones below this are different options for justified type. Justified means it's going to be aligned on both sides, and the only difference between these, if you look at the last line, it just shows where that last line of text is going to align. So let's choose this first one, and that looks pretty good, but notice that I can't see all of my text, so there we go, that looks pretty good. So now all of my text is aligned on the left, and it's aligned on the right. But I still have to look at a couple more details. Look at that first line of text. It starts with the word flowers and ends with the word important. If I look at this one, important is way down here. So if I make this a little bit wider, notice that the word important gets hyphenated. So we're going to turn off hyphenation. So again, I'm going to select all my text. I'm going to click on this. Well, if your page is wide enough, way down here at the right, you can see the word hyphenate. If your screen isn't wide enough, you may need to click on the paragraph and go about halfway. And by default, it hyphenates words. So we're going to unhyphenate that. So that way, we can try to get this closer to the center without the word important dropping down to the next line. Okay, so again, flowers and important, and then at the end of this line it should be the word getting, then to, getting to, Yule and information, and budget. So we do want to make sure that all that text is on there and that we're pretty close to that center line. And then we need to move that down because if we notice that text, the descenders are on that margin. So we're just going to move that whole text box down until those descenders are lining up right above that margin. The next text that we need to set, the last text, is the phone number and the web address. So in the instructions, we have to type that out. We're not placing that text. That's easy enough to type out. So we're going to draw out a text box. And the phone number is 219, and they're using a dot instead of a dash. Okay, 219.864.0100. And then there's a web address in here. We're not going to do a separate text box for that. We're just going to hit return, and we're going to type in www.monarchgiving.com. And again, if your text box is too small, just readjust your text box, because it might look like this, or it might look like it's disappeared completely. Just make sure you have enough space for all of it. Whoops, tilted it. So just make sure it's wide enough. And then we want to use the same font and the same like kerning and tracking and leading as we did in this one. So I'm going to double click. Now you're supposed to be able, this doesn't always work, but you're supposed to be able to use the eyedropper tool to be able to duplicate all of this. But for some reason it's not working for me. So I just need to go in and type Bordeaux Roman, bold, and I want to make sure that it's that 12-point font. So looking at the instructions, it's 12 points and it's black. But note, and then also look at the leading on this. So the leading is 13.8. I just want to make sure that that leading is the same. So this is 14.4. So I just want to do 13.8 so that it's the same. So I'm going to put this up here. I can reduce that text box a little bit. And I want to make sure that those ascenders or the descenders are aligning just above the margin, just like they are here. So that way our text aligns perfectly with each other. But notice in this one that the text is flush right. I want to use flush right. So I'm not going to sit here and like hit the space bar until this goes all the way to my margin. Don't do that. Let the computer do the work for you. So select your text, come up here and use flush right, and that will align right to that margin unless you have the box moved. So just get that aligned to that margin, and that should be about it. Now the only other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that our file is set up properly. So we need to make sure that our images go to our bleed, because we have an image that goes off the edge and we have color that goes off the edge. If we don't have color going off the edge, if our paper is just white and the background of our design is white, we don't need to worry about a bleed. But here we have color and a picture going off the edge. So we have to make sure this goes to the bleed. So I'm going to click on the picture. I'm not moving the frame. I'm just making the frame a little bit wider. So I'm going to go to that red line. This is going to get cut off, but that leaves room for error in cutting. We won't have like a little strip of white if we accidentally don't get it cut right on the edge. I'm going to do the same thing for the top. Now you'll notice that a picture doesn't go up there because it's just white. That's fine. And then we're going to go this way, and this is going to get cut off. And then we're going to go to the blue box, and we're going to drag this to the left. We're going to drag this, oh, remind me later. We're going to drag this to the bottom, and we're going to drag this to the right. Again, this is going to get cut off, but that's so we don't have to throw it away if we mess it up, because if we throw it away, that's going to cost a lot of money. So then you're going to make sure that you save this. So you're going to go to File, Save As, and you can either save it to a flash drive, but if you're saving directly to the computer, go to your Documents, and you're going to make a new folder called Mechanical, because this is what this is called, is a mechanical. I've already created a folder called that, so I'm just going to scroll down to Mechanical, And then I'm going to make sure that I name it properly. Make sure your name is in there and what it is. Okay? Some of you guys are just naming it your name, but is it a composite project? Is it an illustration? Is it a logo? What is it? So I'm going to name it Amber Kozar Mechanical, and the file extension for InDesign is .indd. Don't get rid of that. And then hit save. So I'm going to save that, and then you're going to share it with me. So InDesign has this great new function where you can share the file. So up here in the top right hand corner, there's a share button. And you might get these options here. You want to do share for review, and it will have your name, the title in there from what you saved it. And then you're going to hit create. And once you do that, you're going to add me. So you're going to click add people. You're going to type in AKOSAR at elkhart.k12.in.us. If you want to say something to me, you can type in here, and then you're going to hit invite. Once you hit invite, it says I already have access to it because I'm the owner of it. But once you hit invite, it's going to send me an email letting me know that you're ready for me to look at it. If I need you to make changes to it, I can type in there and send it back to you, and we can communicate through there, kind of like Google Classroom. If you make changes to it, you need to save it, and then you need to hit update link. It will send me a new invitation to look at it, and I can see what changes you made. I can read all of our comments back and forth, so on and so forth. So that's the gist of how you use InDesign. There's more things to it that you'll learn as we continue with the program, but this is the gist of it. I don't know if I don't think I went over I did. I went over the links. When we start working in InDesign and you get done with your files, I will talk about how to package this, because if you just send me an InDesign file, all of this stuff is going to look blurry. Your fonts are going to be gone. The pictures might even be gone. So I'll show you how to package it when we're all done with it. But I'll show you that later on. So just share it with me, and if I need you to make changes to it, I will comment in InDesign, and then you can make changes to that and you can update that link.